Marc brings to us, it always something to worthwhile to consider. Have I stalled long enough, Marc?
Perfect.
Good.
Nobody can stall like you can, Randy.
I know it. It's a gift.
Or curse, one of the two. Okay. Anyway, it's good to see everybody here today, especially in light of all the circumstances. This was not a day that I particularly expected to see visitors. So it's really nice to see Olivia here, a familiar face, and she brings a friend with her, Peyton Clark. Welcome to Clarksville, Peyton. I hope you feel at home here because of that. We're happy that you're here. My Uncle Monroe was married to one of my father's sisters. He was a humorous man, but he was kind of a crude man. I guess all of us have an uncle like that, don't we? We think about it. When Aunt Thelma and he would visit us, it was customary for him to ask my father on Sunday mornings, "What are you going to preach about today, Raymond? Committing all them their sins and drinking all that vile stuff, or drinking all that vile stuff and committing all them their sins?" Well, I guess if Uncle Monroe were here today, I'd have to answer his question by saying, I don't know what to talk about committing all them their sins. But basically, we're going to focus on just one sin today. It's a very common sin, but one that we don't preach about very much. And it's funny that despite all the evil in our world, and we don't have to look far to find it, murder, hatred, burglary, robbery, substance abuse, this sin may well be the most common, especially among 21st century Americans, and perhaps even among 21st century Christians. All right, consider this. You suddenly awake and you realize your alarm clock has failed, okay? Suddenly, everything is in a state of disarray. Everything is in a frenzy in your house. You hurriedly awaken your family and you try to get everybody in a hurry, just like you are in a hurry. And breakfast is completely out of the question. It's every man for himself now. Is everybody going to make it to work and school on time? You're late for work. They're late for work. Are they in trouble? Are you in trouble? And what about lunch? And what about the economy? And what if I lose my job? What if I get sick? What if the car breaks down? What about the price of gasoline? What about the kids' safety at school? What about all the crime? What about the wars in Ukraine and Gaza? What if there's a terrorist attack? Okay, stop. Now you know I'm talking about the sin of worry. And you may be saying to yourself, "Oh, great. I worry about everything. And now, on top of my worrying, I'm going to feel bad about worrying and worry about that." But here's the good news. If worry is an innate part of your being, your situation is hopeless. We cannot disregard our shortcomings by saying, "That's just the way I am. I'm a natural born worrier. I can't help it." Can one claim innocence because he's a natural born thief? Can one claim innocence because he's a natural born murderer? Can one claim innocence because he's a natural born liar? No. Worrying is something that we choose to do. And we are totally accountable before God for the things that we choose to do. But because worry is a sin, then God can do two important things to help us as Christians. He can forgive us, and he can help us overcome the sin of worry. Matthew 6, verses 25 through 34 is one of the greatest passages related to worry and anxiety. And they are the words of Jesus himself from the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus delivered this sermon pretty early in his ministry. And in it, he taught his followers a different way to look at old traditions. He explained that being a follower of God was not so much based on outward appearances as inward attitudes. And one subject that he approached was worrying. And not in a brief way with just a sentence or two, but with 10 verses regarding it. For this reason I say to you, do not be worried about your life as to what you will eat or what you will drink, nor for your body as to what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air, that they do not sow, nor reap, nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not worth much more than they? And who of you, by being worried, can add a single hour to his life? And why are you worried about clothing? Observe how the lilies of the field grow. They do not toil, nor do they spin. Yet I say to you that not even Solomon in all his glory clothed himself like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which is alive today and tomorrow is thrown into the furnace, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? Do not worry then, saying, what will we eat, or what will we drink, or what will we wear for clothing? For the Gentiles eagerly seek all these things, but your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. Seek his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. So do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will take care of itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. So in this passage, Jesus does more than just hand down a command about worrying. He provides reasons why we should not worry or be anxious. And that's what we're going to talk about today. 7 reasons that Jesus gives us for why we shouldn't worry. Verse 26, reason number 1. We shouldn't worry because life is too important to be hung up in worrying about it. That's why he said, is not life more than food? What Jesus is asking here is it really that important that you have all the good things in life? Fancy foods, fancy clothes? While many people the world over wonder whether they will have enough to eat at the start of each day, we in America are pretty picky about the things that we eat. And Jesus instead wants us to value life itself. And he expects us to value others' lives as much as we value our own. The second reason why Jesus says we should not worry is because we're too important to spend our time worrying. In verse 26, he said, is not the body more than clothing? We not only insult God when we worry about food and clothing, in a way, we insult ourselves because worry says to the world, God doesn't look at me as being important enough. God does not look at me as if I have any value, and that worries me. It's an affront to the kindness of Jesus and the kindness of God, and is an affront to our worth as ones who were created in God's image. Reason number 3 why we shouldn't worry. Doesn't do any good. Verse 27. Who of you by being worried can add a single hour to his life? Have you ever looked back at hard times or difficult days in your life and thought, I don't know how I would have made it through that if I hadn't worried about it? Nobody reflects on the past and concludes, money sure was tight, but worry really pulled me through. Or nobody says, my diagnosis was terrifying, but then I got all my friends to worry with me. Can you imagine a doctor telling a patient, well, it doesn't look good. All we can do now at this point is worry. I saw this humorous quote not long ago. They say the things you worry about most are the things that never happen. So therefore, worrying works. At least Will Rogers thought so. Okay, that's funny. But it's not true. Because it isn't that worrying works, it's that worrying does nothing at all. It's of no benefit whatever. Wisdom, I think, is learning and understanding that we are powerless regarding some things. And yet all of us have a tendency to worry about things over which we have no control at all. So it's wasted worry. That's why he says, why worry? It doesn't do any good anyway. Reason number 4. Jesus says we shouldn't worry because God does care about you. He does care about us. That's why he said in verses 28 through 30, and why are you worried about clothing? Observe how the lilies of the field grow. They do not toil, nor do they spin. Yet I say to you that not even Solomon in all his glory clothed himself like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which is alive today and tomorrow thrown into the furnace, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? This is a photograph I took on March 6, 2023. And March 6th is technically not spring yet. March 6th is still winter. And we were hiking at Pettigene Mountain. As we were hiking through the woods, and the floor of the forest was covered with dead leaves that had fallen from the trees the fall before. I happened to look down, and I saw these little white flowers springing up in the midst of those dead leaves. So I grabbed my phone and I took the photograph. And I thought, wow, nobody planted these. Nobody cultivated these. Who put these here? God put them here. Why did he put them there? Because he wanted to. And because they were beautiful. And he created beautiful things for us to enjoy. And because he's created. And according to Jesus, he also put them there as an illustration to us that he will take care of us just as he takes care of them. God covers the ground with grass. Oh, sure, we can plant it, we can water it, we can fertilize it, but even if we don't, it's still going to grow. It'll turn brown in the summer and die, but you don't have to do anything for it to turn green again in the spring. Because that's how Jesus takes care of the things that he created for us. And then Jesus ended this by saying that those who worry are those who have little faith, or maybe even no faith at all. Our worry is really insulting to God. And when we worry, we're denying the truth about God. It's commonplace for people these days to say, God is in control. God is in control of everything. I'm not. Don't doubt that. I would second that. I think that's true. But those who worry, they don't have a right to make that kind of boast. Because those people believe and behave as if they are better at controlling things than he is. And their worry in their lives indicates that they don't really believe that God is in control. The 5th reason why Jesus said we shouldn't worry is because that's what the pagans do. Verses 31 and 32 says, do not worry then, saying, what will we eat, or what will we drink, or what will we wear for clothing? For the Gentiles eagerly seek all these things. For your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. Some of us worry so much we might as well be atheists. A pagan or a Gentile or a sinner does not necessarily have to be one who worships idols. Okay? A pagan is someone really who thinks life is all about what you eat and drink and wear. Pagans believe that life consists in the abundance of one's possessions. Pagans spend their money and they hoard their money as if there is no God watching over them or watching out for them. And yet, it's okay, I think, for us to ponder, what if God does not take care of me? What about Christians who do face starvation? What about the Christians in California who have lost their homes in the recent fires? What about Christians who have died because of cancer or heart attacks or car accidents? These are fair questions, and their answers can be found in the Scriptures. In Revelation, John is given the privilege of looking into heaven. And when he looks into heaven, one of the first things that he sees surrounding the throne are all these people who were put there by non-believers. They are martyrs. They are people who were killed because of their faith in Jesus Christ. And even though they are experiencing and glorying in their heavenly reward, they are crying out, how long? That's what their question is. How long? How long are you going to wait to take vengeance on those who put us here? We're studying Romans on Sunday morning. And in Romans, Jesus told them that even in hardship, persecution, I want you to listen to this. This is what Paul said to the Romans, that even in hardship, persecution, famine, nakedness, danger, sword, and slaughter, they would be more than conquerors. Jesus told his disciples, you will be betrayed even by parents, brothers, relatives, and friends. And they will put some of you to death. Then, after being told that some of them would be killed, he said, but not a hair on your head will perish. How can that be? And then in verse 32, he says, for your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. What things? Well, the things he's talking about. Food, drink, and clothing. God will provide those essentials as long as he wills us to live. But the point is, there's more to life than living. There's more to life than living. We're all going to die. It should not be our goal to stay alive, because you know what? You're going to fail at that. We are here to do more than just avoid death. We're not pagans. Pagans are not a part of God's plan. Our plan should be to serve him and trust that he will keep his promises. Reason number 6 why Jesus said we shouldn't worry is because his kingdom matters too much for us to worry. That's why he said in verse 33, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. What Jesus is asking here is, why not seek a better treasure? Why not invest in things that truly last? The Lord, I think, wants to free us from all the dead ends that we travel down. If you live for more money, you have a reason to be anxious. If your life is your career, that can go bad. If your health or your appearance or your passions, then you may very well end up disappointed and have a reason to fret. But if you seek first the kingdom and righteousness of Jesus, you cannot lose. Reason number 7. He says we shouldn't worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow has enough problems of its own. It'll take care of itself. He says in verse 34, so do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will care for itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. I think these may be this is one of the most poetic things that I think Jesus says in the whole Sermon on the Mount. Today's grace is for today's trials. When tomorrow's trials come, God will have new grace awaiting us. Anxiety and worry are like trying to live out the future before it gets here. Jeremiah said in Lamentations 3:22-24, the Lord's loving kindnesses indeed never cease, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. What's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen tomorrow? Nobody knows. Nobody has any idea what's going to happen tomorrow. We can't predict that. And there are thousands, if not millions, of possibilities. Any one of us could get a bad medical report tomorrow. Any one of us here could be in a serious accident tomorrow. Any one of us here could possibly lose a job. Any one of us here might be subjected to harsh criticisms. Tomorrow might be the last day that some of us are alive. We just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But there's one thing of which I am certain, based on the words of Jeremiah, that there will be new mercies from the Lord when tomorrow arrives. So, how can we stop worrying? One way is to look to Jesus, because he will help. And not only do we know that he will help, he has pledged to us his support and said, lay it on me. Bring your worries about tomorrow and I'll take care of them. Secondly, I think we can look at Jesus. We can look to Jesus. Secondly, we can look at Jesus. Jesus corralled the anxiety in his life with faith and trust in his Father. Whose life could have been filled with more fear, anxiety, and worry than Jesus's, honestly? And yet he left a perfect example for us about how to live under those circumstances. So we look to Jesus, we look at Jesus, and we listen to Jesus. This is his words in Matthew chapter 6 tell us. They should give us strength and hope and a reason not to worry. And then finally, we look to Jesus, we look at Jesus, we listen to Jesus, and we let Jesus have our worries. And he knows, and he wants us to know that true joy and contentment reside only in him. Thank you for your attention. I'm going to move back and take care of what our 13-year-old member normally does on Sunday, but she's not here today, and switch it over to our songs for Randy to lead the next hymn.